One scorching afternoon, my brand new coworker, barely a week into the job, darted over to me looking like she'd just seen a ghost. She was a petite woman with curly brown hair tied into a loose ponytail, and her uniform polo shirt looked slightly oversized on her small frame. Despite her timid manner, her eyes were wide with alarm as she leaned in close to speak. The new employee whispered, wide-eyed, I, uh, I think that little boy over there just stuffed some candy bars down his pants. She pointed shakily toward the candy aisle where a boy who couldn't have been more than 8 was lurking. He was short and skinny, his red t-shirt a size too big, and there was a faint sprinkling of freckles across his cheeks. His messy hair stuck out in every direction, as though he'd just rolled out of bed. The expression on his face practically screamed, "I'm totally not doing anything wrong." I raised an eyebrow and said, "He put candy in his pants, you say? Well, that's certainly creative." My coworker let out a nervous giggle and admitted that she'd never confronted a child thief before. Taking a deep breath, I walked over to the boy, who stiffened like a deer in headlights the moment he saw me. Standing behind him was an older woman, presumably his grandmother, wearing a faded floral print dress. Her short gray hair was pinned back in a tight bun, and she clutched a gigantic handbag that looked big enough to carry an entire week's worth of groceries. I spoke in a friendly yet firm tone. "Hey, kiddo, what you got in your pocket?" The boy's brown eyes went comically wide. He blurted out, Nothing." Instantly, the older woman snapped her gaze up from rummaging through her colossal purse. Granny threw her hands in the air and said, "Oh, for crying out loud again? Boy, if you don't pull that candy out and put it back right now, this lady's gonna call the cops on you. And guess what? I ain't stopping her." Wincing, the boy reached into his sagging pockets, producing 2 squished candy bars and a little mound of crinkly wrapped suckers like he was performing a sad magic trick. He mumbled, "I'm sorry." Granny shook her head and muttered, "You always sorry. Ain't you got no sense?" I thanked the grandmother for stepping in, told her we'd handle it, and watched as she yanked the boy, now looking like a scolded puppy, toward the checkout lines. Despite the heat, she carried herself with surprising energy, her chunky-heeled sandals clacking sharply against the store's tiled floor. A few minutes later, the new hire practically popped out from behind the cereal display, a box of cornflakes clutched to her chest as if she wanted a makeshift shield. The new employee sighed in relief and said, "You made that look so easy. I thought for sure he'd run off." I chuckled and replied, "Well, he might have, if not for the secret weapon." I pointed at the grandmother's formidable handbag, which could have passed for luggage. We shared a laugh and returned to our respective duties. Just when I thought the excitement was over, I spotted a tall, broad-shouldered woman barreling toward me with the same boy in tow. She wore skin-tight leggings and a tank top that clung to her like a second skin, showcasing tattoo sleeves on both arms. Her hair was slicked back into a high ponytail, and she looked furious enough to lift me off the ground with a single glare. She pointed straight at me and demanded, "Is that the one?" The boy, looking more nervous than ever, nodded. His freckles stood out starkly on his pale face, and he shifted his feet like he wanted to disappear. The mother turned to him and asked, "She the one who took your candy?" He whispered something in the affirmative, and the mother spun back toward me, hands on her curvy hips. She narrowed her eyes and said, "Girl, you been messing with my son?" I explained calmly, "I wouldn't say messing with. I just, confiscated some candy he hadn't paid for." She rolled her eyes and shot back. "Confiscated, huh? Since when do you get to confiscate anything? I bought that candy." She gave me a withering stare as if daring me to argue. I held my ground and pointed out that the chocolate had miraculously remained unmelted in the blistering summer heat and that a coworker had seen him remove it from the shelf. The woman stomped her sneaker-clad foot like an enraged bull preparing to charge. She shouted to the other cashiers, "Which one of you tattletales is pointing fingers at my boy? Show yourselves." My co-workers, all in identical navy polo shirts, tried very hard to look invisible as they hovered behind registers and displays. I raised a hand to regain her focus and said, "Ma'am, what's important here is that he was caught shoplifting." And that's. She threw up her arms and interrupted. Pfft, shoplifting my foot. Who the hell cares about a couple of stupid candy bars? You nosy little. She let loose some particularly colorful words that made an older customer nearby cover her mouth in shock. I realized we were seconds away from an all-out brawl when I mentioned that she should be grateful we weren't pressing charges. Her eyes narrowed even further, and I noticed her hands balling into fists by her sides. I said, "Could you, maybe call the manager? Like, right now?" Before my coworker at the service desk could press a single button on the phone, the grandmother reappeared. Her floral dress flapped around her calves as she charged in from behind a towering stack of potato chip bags. Gripping her colossal handbag like a weapon, she swung it at her daughter's arm. Granny snapped, "What the hell are you doing, girl? Making a fool of yourself in public again?" The mother tried to dodge, but Granny was surprisingly nimble. With a fresh burst of energy, the older woman whacked her daughter again, clearly fed up with the theatrics. Granny hollered, "That's enough. You get your crazy butt out to the car this second. You hear me?" The mother raised her hands defensively and pleaded, "But Ma, she—" Granny cut her off, even louder. "I said shut it. Quit causing scenes and scaring people. Go on, get." She then turned to me, her face a mixture of embarrassment and fury. Granny softened her tone and said, "I am real sorry about all this nonsense. This child," she pointed at her daughter, "done lost her mind. She ain't ever coming back in here. I'll see to that." For a moment, I stood there blinking in disbelief, still clad in my plain store uniform and name tag, while my coworkers peered over counters and displays like we were living out a reality show. The mother rubbed her arm, glaring at me as though I had orchestrated everything. Then she sulked away, muttering a series of expletives under her breath. Granny hustled after her, still ranting that she couldn't take her anywhere without a meltdown. When the automatic doors finally whooshed shut behind them, there was a collective exhale from all the employees. One cashier, a lanky teenager with braces, turned to me, his eyes like saucers. He murmured, "Well, I guess that's one way to keep your kid in line." I laughed nervously and replied, "Yeah, remind me never to cross Granny." After the adrenaline rush subsided, I returned to restocking shelves, and the new hire commented that this was easily the strangest shift she had ever worked. We had a good laugh when she joked that maybe the grandmother could be recruited for store security. If only the management could afford her handbag-wielding expertise. As for the mother, she never set foot in our store again, just as Granny had promised. The boy and Granny came back once or twice, on their absolute best behavior. Whenever he even glanced at a candy wrapper, Granny gave him such a death stare that he quickly shoved his hands in his pockets and stared at the floor. I couldn't blame him. Even now, when we swap stories about bizarre customer encounters, someone inevitably brings up Granny and her purse of doom. No one who was there will forget the day a blazing hot afternoon turned into a showdown between a candy-sneaking kid, his furious mother, and the world's most no-nonsense grandmother. Handbag at the ready.